So it's been an interesting week, finally getting going with the store live and getting into that way of life of consistently producing content about my company Shake Works, just to get the brand out there, to encourage people to engage with it and to ultimately buy some of my stuff. And in between all of that, I've recruited a couple of people on a freelance contract basis. Only very, very new. So one of them's just started to do the work, and for the other one, I'm talking through a bit more about what's required. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to talk about around tips for recruiting freelance contractors. In that, I'm not big, so they aren't on a salary, but there comes a point, putting CEO in my email signature, which really stands for Chief Everything Officer, as one of the cliches goes. I need some help just to help me do some things to free up my time so I can focus on other things. And I wanted just to talk about that, because sometimes it's, where do you start if you are a freelancer? You need help with other things, and how do you go about it? So I thought I would just talk a bit around how I'm approaching it, and I've managed to summarize it into 6 key points about what I've been doing from beginning to end. So the first point really is around just my budget, just to make sure that I'm creating money. My day-to-day living expenses, I'm still trimming down to the absolute minimum. There's really not much fat at the moment in terms of my expenditure, and I'm ensuring that any extra money is going towards the business. I'm quite fortunate that other freelance opportunities which I've got are providing consistent money at the moment to cover my core expenses. And in amongst hustling for money, I applied for a commission with an arts-based organisation months ago. I completely forgot I applied, to be honest with you. And then I got an email saying that I got it, and I went, oh, right, okay, that's great. So first, looking forward to doing the work with that organisation, but then secondly, I've got some extra money. And based on my budgeting, this was extra money that I wasn't budgeting for. And this was a key decision, in that, do I take this extra money just to have in savings, so I've got a bit more of a buffer? Do I use that money to invest in equipment and things that I need? Do I use it to treat myself? I just decided to put it back into the business and take this opportunity that let me help leverage my time by getting support with things that I can't do all the time. My thinking behind that was just to feed the business, not be in a situation where all the money that comes in goes out directly to me. I want to grow this, and to grow it, you need to feed it. So I took this opportunity to put the money back into the business. So the first point being of just budgeting my lifestyle at the moment, super lean. So any extra money I can put back in the business. And this commission gave me the opportunity to do that. So firstly, it's the money. And then secondly, it's thinking, when I decided I wanted to do that with this money, it was being clear about, so what are my priorities? What do I need help with? In that I'm a few months into working, I've got into a bit of a rhythm, and being clear about where I want to focus my time and what I need help with. Because ultimately, getting this extra help could help me to be more productive as I'm achieving more each day, and enabling me to scale quicker. So it was really thinking about what my priorities are. And I managed to narrow down my priorities. What I want to be focusing on is this: making sample packs, actually making the actual product of what I'm selling, the actual content of the product, content creation, so really my brand awareness, and the sales side of things. I looked at those 3 priorities and I thought, the help that I need, what support do I need? And both of these roles came into the content creation category. Interestingly, I'll come to in a moment, because I was initially going to have 1 role, but then I created 2, but I won't skip ahead. But essentially, the 2 freelance contract roles that I've recruited for both fit into the content creation brand. So it's really helping me with that, because I'm looking at where my time has been limited, and that's something I really want to focus on. And the third point was just doing the actual tasks before actually outsourcing them. So both of these things I've been doing. So with that, I've got a practical understanding of what is required. And then to create the role, I just wrote out a list step by step of what I've been doing and what tools I've been using to do that, which has formed the basis of my job description. So I feel having that practical grounding has enabled me to outline the job so it's very clear what somebody else would do, explaining it even more to somebody else because they're not in my head. So being really explicit about what's required and what the purpose of the role is. So step by step, what's required, and being really clear within that of creating clear targets, what my expectations are, putting numbers to things, a time scale, just so it's really clear about what they're working to. And I'm ultimately clear about what success looks like of this role. If I'm putting money into it, I want to get something from it. And being clear about my expectations is going to help me feel better about what the role is actually doing. In addition to creating step by step, creating what I call a resource list. So what do they essentially, if I was in a working environment, it would be, what support do you need to do the role? So this is what support they would need to do the role. Simply sort of tools. In my basic situation, one of the roles was just messaging people on social media, almost like cold calling, cold messaging them, offering them a free pack in exchange for joining the mailing list. So with that, it's just a message template and an email address and some other sort of like tips. So being clear about what they need to actually do it. And all of that just really created a lot of clarity just because I knew what was required before outsourcing it, which helped me a lot with actually making the role practical and achievable. Then the next point was thinking about a rate of pay. I'll come to the role which I created. So there was another role that I created, which, actually no, I'm skipping ahead. I'm going to stick back to the original role. So for the messaging role of creating this rate of pay, to be honest, complete guess. I did not have an idea. I thought about a few things about what I've been doing, how many I did per hour, and thinking of, say as a freelancer and skills required. So I took a guess. I've got a feeling I may be slightly overpaying, but I'm comfortable with that at this moment in time. At the end of the contract, because I specified what that length of work would entail, I'll review it and see whether I'm overpaying or not. So there was that. And for the other role, it's very similar to other people that I've worked with. So I knew the ballpark of what to price at. So that was based on previous experience. After that, it's going into the recruitment process. Now, the roles are only recruited, advertised beginning of the year. I really just went through external job boards that I was aware of and LinkedIn. So I think in terms of job boards, I went to 3 job boards and LinkedIn, so 4 places in total. And in addition to that, sending the link to some people I know and saying, I'm advertising for this. Do you know anybody that would be interested? Previous colleagues that I've worked with at other organisations and friends as well. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I didn't post anything through my social media channels through ShakeWorks because at that time it didn't really exist and I would be posting into an empty void because I don't have a following, so I didn't go that route. And with that, going back to the job description part, I kept it really, really basic in terms of person spec, in that really 4 main points. It was just 4 points, keeping it straight to the point. Application process, really simple. CV, up to 500 words, covering letter, and keeping it really, really simple. And then after that, I'm shortlisting. I'm grading myself based on those four points. And when it came to actually asking the questions, I was going to do an interview because it was all done over Zoom. I wanted to keep it really trimmed down. So all the questions were directly related to the essential points on the person spec. There was no weird personality things on trying to get a sense of how you think and how you feel in particular things. It was a case of, here's this point, how do you approach it? Just keeping it as simple as that. And my approach was keeping the answers practical, tightly related to the person spec. By doing that, by what the person's saying, their personality and things is going to show through how they're answering. And that's the approach that I took. and all beforehand creating a clear template as I was doing it on Zoom of how I was going to be documenting all of the answers, a nice table of the questions, capturing what they said, as well as a scoring system that I created as well. So that was the recruitment process. And through that recruitment process, it was great because I managed to recruit somebody for that role, for the main role. But then also I met somebody else, and I think this comes into being open during the recruitment process. I had in mind of a role that I wanted, an additional role that I wanted, a podcast editor to create some video snippets of each of the episodes that I'm creating for the podcast that I'm doing with guests. I knew I wanted to do that, but I didn't have the money at the time. And during this recruitment process, I got some additional freelance work and things were looking up, and I thought, again, some additional work, my core expenses are covered, let me put this back into the business. And it created a great opportunity, as what I had in mind was absolutely perfect. Again, it's a role which I've been doing practically, but need help with, as it would save me a lot of time. So I actually recruited for 2 people within the same recruitment process, which was absolutely fantastic, and I was over the moon about. And after recruiting these people, the induction process, just making it very, very clear. Yes, I put a lot of effort into making the job description really, really clear, but ultimately it was about talking through the role and going through it, covering all angles, big picture, like what the vision, what the purpose for the role is, but then also small picture, step by step, what it looks like in reality. Creating a checklist of what's required for the role, the email templates, different digital assets, things like this. Talking about pay, how it will happen, how they invoice, how regularly I pay, and to schedule some check-in points just to see how the role is actually going. And with that, just seeing how it's going and maybe just to learn about some changes that need to happen along the way. And ultimately, all of those things help me to, I feel, get off to a good starting point of recruiting these 2 people. And it's something to consider if you're in a similar situation. Bearing in mind, I'm not big at all. I'm very much at the beginning, but just by some careful budgeting, being humble with my expenses, and with the priority of feeding the business, I've been able to recruit 2 freelancers on a contract basis to help leverage my time. I'm sure many people can do the same if they look at their finances very, very carefully. Hope you found that interesting, and I'll be back again with some more stuff soon. So thanks for taking the time to see this through, and I'll be back again. Take care.